multiple times a week, whether I'm at a live event or people just cold DMing me. There's a young entrepreneur who wants to pitch me the next great idea, whether that's for me to be a customer or be an investor or be a partner. And the biggest tell to me of a brand new entrepreneur is how secret they are. Whether that's please sign an NDA or I can't tell you because you're going to take my idea. And that's probably the biggest tell, because a seasoned entrepreneur knows that everything, absolutely everything, is purely in the execution side. A great idea is a great idea. Execution is absolutely everything. And so a seasoned investor or a seasoned entrepreneur will come up and tell me absolutely every idea on the go-to-market strategy. They've already thought through some of the objections and where the concept fails. And they're as open as possible, because once you've gone through one or two businesses, you realize that even when the product is fully functioning and operational, the hardest part of everything is communicating the idea to the world. And you will theoretically and physically be standing at the mountaintops, screaming about your idea, hoping that somebody engages with it. And so most new entrepreneurs, I think, are entirely too scared and too quiet, and being almost in a secret agent versus being external and loud about it as possible. When I first started as an entrepreneur, it was in the service business as a real estate professional. And it was a real big mind shift to make sure that I was willing, and again, this applies to any business in the entrepreneur realm, is that becomes who you are. You have to go all in on that. And I see, first-time founders as well as service-based entrepreneurs want to keep a kind of separation of, hey, this is my business, this is my job versus this is my friend circle, and there's a big distinction, and I'm not too loud about it. But whether you're in a service business, direct-to-consumer product, you have to go all in. It has to become your brand, your identity, and literally screaming it from the rooftops. And I had to learn that early on, that there is no separation between me and what role I was in that season of life. One of my good friends, Tyler Smith, is the founder of Skyslope. And the first time I went to go visit him in his Sacramento office, there's a big mural right when you walk in that says, "Innovation is rewarded, but execution is worshipped." And that's probably the best way to frame how I think ideas work. First-time founders will have an idea and be scared that someone else is going to take that from them. A seasoned founder has probably been through several iterations. And one of the things I learned as an entrepreneur and a founder was, once you build something, the amount of people that will come up to you and go, "I thought of that 3 years ago. I thought of that last week," or "You stole my idea." The reality is ideas are cheap. Execution is what's rewarded in life. And you can actually post your idea to the internet, and still people will not execute on it. You need domain expertise. You need go-to-market strategy. You need capital. You need to understand how to find product market fit, to test it, to see if there's an economic value with consumer acquisition cost and margin and all of the things that make business so hard. So I feel like too many people get stuck on, does the idea even work? And someone will copy me, forgetting the fact that everything's hard. And taking the risk and investing time, money, and energy is the biggest barrier of entry into becoming an entrepreneur. Once you decide to go down the founder entrepreneur path and choose to share your ideas publicly, you're going to get lots of feedback. Some good, some from the cheap seats with just opinions. I would value the opinions of who they're coming from, because what I've learned, the weightlifter at the gym who's in very good shape is not going to make fun of the first timer. The entrepreneur who's had several exits will probably be more graceful and give better feedback than the person who works a full-time job. So I would really focus on whose opinions I'm gathering. And sometimes they can feel like the most blistering critiques, but they're coming from a place of experience where if they grill you on total addressable market to consumer acquisition to cost to lifetime value, to the margin you will have in that business, is that math formula upside down from consumer acquisition cost to margin. It's not because they're trying to be rude. It's because they probably learned a very expensive lesson that took years from their life. And that line of questioning comes actually from trying to protect you from going through the same experience. I think the biggest lesson learned as an entrepreneur is that everything takes more time, more money, and is much harder than you originally underwrote. The amount of pitch decks I've seen where you go from $100,000 to $1 million to $10 million in revenue year over year is astounding. And it comes from the required level of delusion to be an entrepreneur, which I think about a lot. It's necessary for you to have the audacity to go start something 0 to 1 and create something new in the world. And it's the gift and the curse, because it's that same level of delusion that normally doesn't let you take outside input at the stages when it's most valuable. And personally, and through all my friends I've witnessed do it, you were told exactly not to do that. You went and did it anyway. You lost lots of money and time. And then you had to experientially learn it and gather your own wisdom, even if it was told to you by someone you cared about deeply. But I think part of the journey is no different with a small kid. When you tell them not to touch something, they do it anyway. And then they create that fear feedback loop and said, sharp things cut and hot things burn. And so in entrepreneurship, sometimes you could be given the best advice, but you still have to go through the experience yourself. Once you have the courage to share your idea with the world, you're inviting feedback, criticism, and I think that's where the fear stems from. But the beautiful side of it is you're also inviting constructive feedback and excitement. When you land on a really good idea and you have domain expertise and you have a great go-to-market strategy, the people who get excited could be partners, could be employees, could be investors that really bring a creative value to your idea and your enterprise to help it scale. They could be distribution partners, they could be affiliate partners. And so once you get over the fear and you start actually openly sharing with anybody that listens, sometimes it's just that single person that changes the trajectory of that opportunity, whether it's one introduction, one check written, adding credence and validity by being associated with your idea. And then it goes from an idea to a company. Once you've gotten over the fear and you're on the way to creating something, the best advice I can give somebody is to get to a minimal viable product to test product market fit. The amount of times I've sat in front of an entrepreneur who spent months or years inside of pitch competitions and incubators and conceptually working on things without real market feedback. And market feedback to me is defined by a credit card. One thing is to survey market participants. Say, if I were to build X, will you give me X amount of money per month, one time, whatever the business model is? And I think that is a false positive, because a lot of people will say, sure, yeah, I'd buy that. I would want to get to a credit card as soon as possible, a monetization event that's testable, because a lot of people will say one thing in a survey, but once you say, okay, give me X amount of money per month or one time for a product or service, that is when the rubber hits the road. And finding product market fit is probably the most important part in the journey of entrepreneurship. Once you've made a commitment to making an idea a reality, you should go from concept to MVP, minimal viable product, as soon as possible, because the only thing that matters is whether a consumer is willing to give you money for your product or service, and validating that to product market fit is the only thing that matters. Yeah, for a founder who's in stealth mode or is still very secretive, the goal should be to be as loud as possible as soon as possible. Once you can get the market to give you feedback, whether it's good or bad feedback, and the idea could be, halfway built, and they said it's missing this, that feature, you're also getting validation that your roadmap even makes sense. I think too many founders get stuck in making the perfect product versus just getting a minimal product out into the market. And the most valuable feedback is somebody's money for your idea.